Welcome to the first episode of Tabletop Discussion. Welcoming Alex and Sam yet again.
Hello.
Howdy.
This week we're going to be doing something a little different. As a matter of fact, we're going to be bringing you all sorts of different behind the scenes and even potential lore stuff that we didn't actually get to mention or didn't actually get to talk about throughout the sessions of the Crucible of Avarice campaign. Now, obviously, we won't really go into spoilers of what might be for the future of the game, but we will talk about stuff that has happened and stuff that is currently happening. But we've also got topics. For instance, we're going to be talking about the meta in tabletop RPGs, or at least more specifically, what the meta usually is, or what a meta is, and then we'll talk about the meta that we think that exists in our games. Sounds easy enough?
We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. All right. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. So, for instance, meta. So, who would like to try and explain what a meta is?
That's actually kind of a difficult question because we always say that it's like, shut up, Sam. Sam, this is no time for jokes.
I've never seen delayed disappointment.
What meta is.
I've never seen delayed disappointment like that. That was like perfect slow-mo.
I have. I've done many bad jokes in front of Alex before like that. No, Alex, you can explain it.
No, I mean, well, I'm not sure if I could really do it justice, to be honest. Meta is basically all of the stuff that we know, but people don't, but our actual characters don't know. Like, it's stuff that, it's like we know that we're playing a game, but our characters don't know that they're in the game. So if they were to get like really meta, they could reference like, oh, if only I get above like a 20, I can make this roll. And it's like, we know that, but they don't know that. So just say, oh, I got to kick this really good.
Okay.
And that's how they're doing it.
Okay, so that's meta gaming. That's knowing of the meta in a way. I'm actually talking about the meta as in the terms of actual gameplay meta. This can often be a result of the explanation of players, similar to the concept that you just talked about there, but instead of a more literal mechanical sense, players being more self-aware about the ups and downsides of certain mechanics to such an extent that they start all knowing about certain things that are very good, things that eventually become used a lot, to the point of which that it is the go-to, the first thing that happens, or something that happens way too often because people start becoming aware of just how good it is. This can often result in certain situations, such as the luck feat in D&D. A lot of people wanting to try and get characters that can just get their hands on the luck feat, or even a lot of different types of belief in like other games such as Dark Souls or Elden Ring, where the meta is bleed-based weaponry because bleed is very good. You might even say that the meta in, let's say for instance, you might even say like a meta in like a first-person shooter is one particular type of gun or a special type of grenade. I remember the meta in way back, this is really, really way back, Modern Warfare 2, the meta was claymores. Because people would just always get tons of kills with claymores. But ultimately, we're talking about the meta in tabletop RPGs. I feel like a meta, obviously, we should probably talk about this, is not only just meta gaming, so knowing knowledge that your character wouldn't actually know. For instance, they know knowledge that the player knows, but how in-universe would they do? Yeah, that's meta gaming. But actually, the meta within a game, I'm more talking about is, say, for instance, let's say there's an ability that is very powerful or an item that is very powerful, and it is basically the thing that is always first to be used, or it is basically to such a degree that everyone wants to use it or everyone starts using it.
Oh, so we're talking about min-maxing then?
Not necessarily min-maxing. Like, for instance, you could say, oh, the meta is, I don't know, say, for instance, someone figured out, like, a very particular type of material in the game, and they were like, oh, this is so good, it works with almost every, if not every build. Why would we ever use anything else? And it might not even be the thing that we thought was the best. Like, say, for instance, we say, Mineral is the best because it's practically indestructible, and it has the highest damage modifier. It's also impervious to electricity, so therefore it can also affect mimics. And someone goes, yes, but this material that exists, I don't know, say for instance ion, which is similar to vibranium in certain ways, actually has better modifiers for this, that, and the other. And because everyone's here, mineral is actually a waste. So we all go for ion. So having that just, ion is the meta. It just either in a certain way or in a certain specific way there is either a loophole, or it's actually somehow just so good that there's almost no reason as to why people wouldn't use it, and therefore they always do. You could say willpower is a meta because people use it a lot to try and get out of literally everything.
I got one that's one that I think everyone uses if they're a power user. Well, most power users, with
I think I know what you're
the
going to say
SP
now.
modifier. Yeah, skill harmony.
Yep.
Everyone,
Yeah.
everyone, ever since it came up, it's like, it's just obvious that you should take it. It just gives you an extra +5 on your modifier to SP. And yeah, why wouldn't you take that?
It's a really good ability because even at the level that you can get it at, because you can only get it at level 6, and you have to have had 5 different types of perks. You need a threshold perk called Superpower Martial Artist, and then you need 4 different types of ability types before you're allowed to even have it. The earliest you can get it at is level 6. What it does is, whatever your level is at SPMA, it then halves that and adds that to your modifier. So the maximum you can have it at is 10, but is 5, but you therefore have to have your level at 10. Therefore, that means that when you first ever get it, at the earliest that you can get, you will only get +3 added to your extra SP modifier. Now, if you already have +10 on your modifier, which is the highest modifier that you can get for it, that already means that you are at 13, which is higher than what was originally believed to be the highest. By the time that you get to 15, by the time that you get to 10, you'll then have 15, which is way beyond what you originally thought that could be possible. So yeah, no, I definitely see what you're talking about there. It's something that Sam, I think you're the only person that actually full on has. No, that's a lie. What's his name? Fletcher just recently got it. Connor recently just got it for Fletcher.
We're up so fast.
The one that I always go with as a meta, is it in most games it makes most sense to me, is, or like in like tabletop games, is dexterity.
Yes, could you explain?
Well, the way it goes for me is that, okay, I'll do a very brief example for D&D, just people who don't know this system in particular. A good example is that you have a higher dexterity in D&D, you have a better armor class, which means the more difficult it is to be hit. This means it's very good to have a very high dexterity. In this game, this is a more reactionary based kind of fighting system. You react and you attack and you get reactions against you. The reason dexterity is the best attribute for this rather than strength is that in dexterity, all the abilities allow you to take, if you succeed, you take no damage. Either leap out of the way, or you leap out of the way, and if you get high enough, you can attack back. You just leap out of the way. You can do a fair bit of damage enough with dexterity. Some of the better kind of skills are dexterity based, like stealth and finesse, and like using a katana, for example.
Yeah.
And the reason I say this is because people will think strength's great, yeah, because you're strong. I think strength is kind of a bit crap in that
Overrated?
regard. Yeah, because you can lift heavy things up. most of the time you're not lifting heavy things up. Even then, strength attacks, in this game at least, you get buffs. Strength and dex, you can do either hand-to-hand, which is strength-based, or martial arts, which is dex-based. But they do the same damage.
The only argument that I'd actually argue for this is the only argument, which is the super stat variant. Like, super dex is just better dex. Like, you know, it's from a superpower, so it does 2 times. It then obviously multiplies your throwing range by however many points that you have in it. However, the super strength does that, but it also then multiplies the durability damage that you do to any object that has durability by an extra 2 times for every +1 to super strength that you get. On top of the damage that you deal, you can also lift heavier objects, larger objects, and even have the same throwing modifiers, but for things that are much larger. And on top of that, you can also do special types of feats. Like, for instance, you can gain access to another damage type, such as Sonic, which is something that you cannot gain access to with Super Dex. So I definitely see, like, a base stats. I definitely agree with you. Like, the meta is go with Dex. Go on.
I didn't even finish my argument for why strength is crap.
Go on.
Because, as I said, reactionary based system. Dexterity, you can... all the reactions you have, if you succeed, you take no damage. Strength-based one, really the only one you have as a defense is blocking. Blocking, if you succeed at blocking, you take half damage. You don't take no damage, you take half damage. Which means immediately strength in this bit is a major downside. Whereas dexterity, only upsides. Strength, as I said, strength, yeah, you can lift. Super strength, yeah, you can lift things. You can lift heavy things. Most of the time, I don't think I've ever lifted anything heavy besides maybe a car.
Well, this is the thing, like, in the Adamite Tales thing, is that, you know, it's kind of more balanced in that way, because it will be useful in many ways, because you can just use super strength in some cases in place of speed to, like, launch yourself out of the way.
That's true.
Yeah.
I was actually
That is an SPMA though.
Well, it depends.
No,
Considering you told me it was an SPMA, Joe.
No, I said you can make it as an SPMA. It's actually an ability that certain power users can get passively, but you can make it as an SPMA.
Exactly.
Or you can just say, I'm going to attempt it. I was actually going to say, like, I kind of agree with you up until one point, because you say it's useless or it's crap. I say I agree with Alex that there is a balance to it. I do see what you mean, like to the difference between, like, completely avoiding damage and, you know, taking it. I understand that. However, although blocking does exist specifically and only for the concept of blocking an opponent rather than dodging, there are some things that you can never avoid. Like, if there is an AoE, like an area of effect, where your move speed, you are never going to outclock that. Natural 20 on an evasion is not going to help you, because evasion is based on your move speed. You still roll dexterity, but it's still based on, like, if your move speed is 30 and the blast radius is 60 meters, you're done for. That's it. You're getting hit by it. Strength, on the other hand, if you're holding something that you can put in front of you, you can just roll blocking, and a success means that you don't even need to get a 5 or above to not only half the damage if anything comes through whatever you've just held, but it also means that if what you're holding has the durability to survive it, you don't even need to worry about taking damage, which immediately has swapped those two arguments around. Because
can I argue that as well? Then?
I'd say no, only because that will run out of time. But I see where you're coming from. Don't get me wrong. I see where you're coming from. Like, I would definitely agree that, like, that's, you know, that is a meta to some degree. But I'd actually argue super stats in general are just meta. Like, super stats in general are just meta. Like, I see where you're coming from, but to be fair, I know why you're saying it. It is more because you're saltier about not having the ability to just always remove damage 100%.
It does help. You can just ask, who besides me, like the majority of the people in the party are dex based.
And that's fair enough. Like, I don't.
That's what I mean by that being a meta.
Yeah, no, yeah, and that's where I agree. But almost everyone has a super stat, except from one person who doesn't have any kind of super stats. But everyone else has a super stat, or at least access to a super stat, which therefore means that it is a meta. Yes, you're right. Everyone has super decks who can access a super stat, but you have super strength. Rakia has super intelligence and super wisdom, and
super dex.
Well, yeah, I'm mostly talking about the ones that aren't super dex. But then you also have Felix, who has super strength and super con on top of super dex. So it's still that thing of like there are other super stats other than just super dex that are being used. Hence why I say it's definitely super. It's definitely super stats in general that are kind of the meta. Do I think that super dex is better than super strength in a lot of ways? Yes. Do I think that it's better than super strength? No. I don't, because I've seen a player with actually less super strength than Rakia had super dex in another game, and nobody could get out of their grapples. Whenever they had anything that they blocked with, they never took any damage. Whenever they used labor, nothing I put in front of them could stop them, because they'd either break it or they just break it open, or lift it open, or remove it from the area. And finally, knockout, they would instantaneously knock anyone out unconscious. So I couldn't really do much. And that was good, because obviously then it meant that I had to plan for a higher set of encounters, like stronger encounters, to be able to balance that out. Which obviously is something that you have to do with a lot of different things. For instance, super dex users, if there is someone who has super strength or super dex at max level, you have to try and come up with some stuff. But so I mean, I definitely agree with you though. Like, they are definitely a meta. I just don't think it's necessarily just super dex, because I've had more issues. I've had issues with all of them, and it hasn't just been specifically one as the narrator.
Bit more just dexterity as a whole, not just super dex, but just the attribute stat dexterity.
I'd kind of
being the meta.
I'd kind of agree. It is kind of a meta, yeah. Strength is. I'd say if you were to tell me like what's the most like meta abilities. If a super strength user is done right, they are more ridiculous and more meta. More of a meta than a super dex character. But if you were to ask me like what is the most meta stat, I'd actually say either charisma or dex. So yeah, fair enough.
So it was charisma, actually, yeah.
Yeah, charisma's so good.
Yes. But no, yeah. Anyway, more stuff. Different dexterity.
I actually have one for the campaign, but I was going to ask if Alex, you have one beforehand.
Not really. Well, it's funny you should say charisma and stuff, because I was going to say a bit about that, but I think it's the reason why it's so meta is because it is very subjective on its own anyway.
Yes.
So you can just come up with like really, it's like, why would they agree to that? It's like, well, we've got a higher roll, that's why they agreed to that. But you have to come up with another reason why. It was just but you just have to come up with a completely bullshit reason why that is. And I think that's why it's like the meta in power, because it's like it can do that, because it's not just a case of like you hit something and it goes flying, or you dodge out of the way just in time. It's like
it's not really based on damage. You can completely defeat an opponent, so long as the narrator is allowing for that possibility. You can defeat an opponent without dealing a single point of damage. Now, obviously, there is, as you said, it is subjective. There is an issue with it because, again, it's based on roleplay. So it's that thing of like, if someone just straight up goes, "Yeah, a natural 20 isn't going to save you here," because why would they suddenly change their entire personality because that you just said, "No, stop, please come back"? Like, it just doesn't make sense. So it's like, obviously in situations like that, it's like, well, a natural 20 at worst is going to basically get them like for the next like roll and for the next rotation until you hit them, they're going to be like maybe rolling disadvantage.
I've just realised something. In Batman versus Superman, it's the Martha moment. That's what we're talking about.
I'd say yes, because it's kind of like two players finally meeting each other. And it's that moment where it's like, oh, my character has no other reason. And it's like, well, okay, roll charisma. So, and you just go, Martha. Okay, I guess roll charisma. And then you just roll charisma against him. And then Superman just gets somehow a natural 20, even though he can barely speak. And Batman gets a natural 1. And he just goes, why did you say that name? Yeah, and that's just and that's his charisma. That's his charisma just going straight to 1, because he goes from like this really badass and relatively quite quiet guy to suddenly like screaming at him like uncontrollably. But yeah,
our moms have the same name. We are friends now.
my actual answer to a meta inside of the campaign, strenuous forms.
Really? Oh, show your work.
Almost everyone has either a strenuous form or an overdrive, or a transformation-like state. Now, I will say I'm not necessarily counting transformation powers, but if you are adding another strenuous form or a transformation-like form or mode change, I count that. So, for instance, night mode, paladin mode, your new strenuous form that you have yet to show off. Alex, you have like 3, because you have like 2 different ones based on your super stats, and then you have an overdrive. Bill has Wrath of Man or Wrath of Humanity, which isn't a strenuous form, but it's kind of a mode change like ability or feat. And then I think, I might be wrong, but I think Fletcher has an overdrive. And I know that Juice was sort of dangling around the possibility of having a strenuous form at some point. So is that thing of so like
fun?
They absolutely are. But that's the thing. I think I know why it's a meta, because it's that thing of like, I can add some more form or finesse or some more power or some more resistance or some more whatever to my character. My character is able to do all of these different things in this sudden new mode change. Like, it's a new step up. Like, whilst this is active, I can do greater things. I can reach greater heights. And I think it is that kind of that silly Super Saiyan ideology, like that belief of like, yeah, this is my next form, sort of thing. And I think that's why, because it also grants passive abilities temporarily as well, like passive boosts, like damage resistance, increase in damage output, or even just special effects that just make the character's life a little bit easier during the time or the duration of the ability. So yeah, that's definitely a meta, because almost everyone has a mode change, a form, a strenuous form, an overdrive, a whatever. It's just, yeah.
In that case, would my, SP maze that I've created to compensate for some of my terrible stats be meta as well?
I don't know, because I think that those are quite clever, but I don't think anyone else has really done that before. Like, no one else is really doing that. And also, like, they're not being used like all the time. They were sort of to combat some issues like once every now and again, rather than, oh yeah, I'm only ever going to use it all the time. Because obviously I wouldn't have allowed it if that was the case. If you could like use it in the stead of everything at all the time and never have to roll for anything else but super intelligence for everything. Because obviously I would not have allowed something like that, because that's ridiculous.
I do find that as well. I do like the certain thing. I don't know, because it's kind of like, it is meta, but I found a way to work it into the story a little bit. I mean, I talked to you about this will come up in the next session, like the fact that a character, has implied that, he's inside the minds of our characters and stuff. Like we don't really, our characters don't fully know the significance of this character. We do. Again, that's a bit of meta, because we know who Cleafoff is, or is a version of another character that was in a campaign, and that's why I was going, I knew it. when it came. I was just like, knew it, because I was so close to actually getting it, and then you just threw me off the trail again. I thought, oh, maybe it's not, and then you just put up the art that I commissioned of them ages ago, and it was just
Yes.
sort of like, yeah, I knew it. I freaking knew it. It was confirmation. But yeah, in those terms, it's like Rakia still doesn't really. Well, Rakia wasn't in the previous campaigns, and Rakia doesn't fully know what's going on. Has a good idea of what their powers are, but not really sure. Like, she's just going to assume that he has some sort of mind power, and that's how I'm going to play for getting the certain abilities which will combat telepathic abilities
No.
as sort of defensive forms. So I don't know whether that really counts, because on a meta level, it's like, yeah, I've been thinking of doing this for a while, but I haven't had a reason to create these things.
I wouldn't say it's
You
meta,
know,
because it's
yeah.
also not a meta ability. Also, your character didn't get it for meta reasons. Like, you've wanted to do it, but you haven't had the actual in-game lore excuse until now, because it's like, Rakia thinks that this is actually a telepathic ability, and Rakia, therefore, is trying to come up with weird mind tricks with her own super intelligence to combat those situations and those abilities.
Yeah.
And again, it makes sense, because Bill was telling me about an ability that he really wanted to make, but I said to him, why don't you make it? And he goes, no, it makes no sense now for me to make it, because at the time we had this moment where it's like everyone split up. And it's like, no, if we're doing this epilogue thing, why would I bother making this ability now? Because it's right at the end, and he's not going to be around any of the party members or anything. There's no point in him making this, and so on and so forth. Now that everyone is back together, he has made a couple more abilities that he was talking to me about. Because it's now a thing that's like, well, Cloak has had actual time to see and speak to them and learn more about them, and have actual experience with them and stuff like that. So it's now making more sense why he's building the abilities that he's making. But yeah, it's the same thing as trying not to do metagaming and meta behavior and meta character building. Like, oh, why are you suddenly making this? Just in case. And you're like, yeah, your character doesn't know why they'd be making this. So it's that kind of thing is quite difficult. I was actually going to
so many times.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I was actually going to say the reveal at the end of it, at the end of it being Cleafoth. Cleafoth being based off of a character that Alex once played as, but an evil version. Alex played as Aspen Green, a character that had nature and biology manipulation, so they could grow and manipulate plant life. And in a campaign that we did, at one point they eventually got they got the ability. Sorry, I'm knackered. They got the ability of to become part plant life, so they could actually become a wooden person or a plant person, similar to I don't know, Groot or something. But they could still have the ability of biology manipulation, and they could do all sorts of things like stopping people, telekinetically manipulating them, and even harming them, as well as healing them brilliantly as well. So it's having that, and it's just those moments, and just taking that and using that as a villain for this part of the campaign. I just thought it would be perfect. But yeah, it's just that thing, and even explaining the reason as to why they were passing through all the walls is because all the walls are made of wood and veneer.
That absolutely threw me off.
Yeah,
it made so much sense afterwards.
The other thing is that this is actually something that I was going to do. Is the deck was a bunch of wooden flooring, and he was he was able to pass through it, but then he couldn't pass through the marble flooring on the floor of the mall. So it was that thing of couldn't actually do anything about that, and so he had to go into the bookstore where it was just a bunch of
wooden things.
Yeah, and I was like, that will work. And the knife was the mineral blade that you had made, so I was like, okay, that was great. Even having an even deeper cut for it, their modifier was 13, because when you once built Aspen, you only could get them up to +8, and skill harmony didn't exist at that time. So I built them with +8 in mind, and then I gave them skill harmony, and then they then had the extra +5, so they had 13. So it was just that little extra thing of like, well, this is them if they had actually like trained their SPMA for a little bit longer, and they eventually got all of these different effects. So it's just as many deep cuts for this particular character reveal as I possibly could. Even having it that, like, as you said, I used the artwork for the one that you commissioned from Coin, our very own Coming Soon Entertainment. We were able to use that, and that reveal, I think, was probably one of my favourites. What will happen next? I don't know, because you guys are somewhat unpredictable. But I actually did bring this up to Sam. So this is actually something I wanted to talk about. You guys, okay, so you guys, in the beginning of the tournament, you guys were very kill crazy, fight happy, and even interested in challenging others, as well as others challenging you, either to one-on-ones or group battles. You haven't really done too much combat in the last, like, so many sessions. I mean, like, fair enough with Aliator, like, you know, he you know, that was sort of forced upon you in a lot of ways. But you guys haven't done that, and I understand that you've been on a cruise ship. Why would you challenge random people? But there have been a lot of people who have had the bans, or who have just been straight up asking to get punched in the face, and I keep trying to tempt you with it. Because I don't want to always have it that you have to fight because that someone else has thrown the first punch. I want it that, like, you feel like you have the freedom to say yes and no to certain fights, because when the fights happen that you can't say yes or no to will happen. Those ones will be the ones that is like, okay, these ones are like, you know, the background noise, but the ones that we get to decide are the ones where, you know, either we you know, speak to them and we don't like how they speak to us, or we find them ourselves, and stuff like that. So just, yeah, I don't know. So I don't know. Alex, do you have anything to say about this?
Well, yeah, I mean, I do feel a bit called out because, like, part of me is like being more cautious because, you know, I just, this is like, it's for real now. There is like no safety net. So I'm trying to pick my battles a bit more carefully. But, and also, there is like an in-canon reason, not just a meta reason, why Rakia isn't so kill happy as she used to be. It's the fact that she is in a civilian environment. I think I actually did say this in a few ways. You know, in a sort of like in a joking way, it's like, you know, well, children don't have points. You know, none of these people have points or anything. And it's like, you know, she's not entirely okay with this new thing. Like, I mean, she's absolutely psyched to be in the tournament again because she loves the competition and she wants to win, of course. And that hasn't changed. But especially, like, you know, on the cruise ship and stuff, finding that, you know, there's collateral damage to this. Like, people who haven't consented to be in the tournament are getting hurt or even killed.
I just find it very odd from like
not,
the I don't know, like I just find it very odd from the magpie that Rakia was sort of like proven to be, like, oh, like immediately darting off at the nearest chance of stealing or taking or, you know, fighting due to either gaining points or gaining power.
Well, so that's the thing, because it's like there isn't anything really to gain from like civilians and stuff. Like, she's not like so kill happy. I mean, this is why she darted off, you know, with Aliator, because it's like, you know, I mean, even said in like the you know, in that episode, you know, just Raki's thinking about, should I do this? No, he was a dick. I hate him. Like, and this is a lot of money, so I will take that. But she won't just immediately go out. Like, the reason why there was just like taking everything, because that is in the competition. It's like it is a free for all on the island. And it is and it is like just everything is like very formal, you know, in the second part of the tournament. Whereas this, it's sort of, it is a bit different. Like, you know, if someone comes up and like challenges her and there is a lot of points, she will have to make that willpower roll. She will have to do that because it's gonna
You've
gonna
met
happen.
three
but
people with... Well, you've met two people with a lot of points. You've met three people that have been well within your wheelhouse of fighting.
well,
And-
first of all, no, not really. I mean, well, yes, but like the character moment didn't actually call for it
No,
at the moment because
no,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
I mean,
'Cause,
like,
yeah, I would
well,
absolutely love to have.
first one was the fact that it was just like this person had obviously no interest in wanting to do that, but also you were trapped. Second, which is technically, I guess, the first one, the character was actually charisma rolling to seduce you. So again,
And it worked.
Character role working. And I guess the third one, you were drunk? Question mark. Like.
Yeah, well, actually, that was mainly it. It's like that was like a meta decision there. It's like, well, that's the thing because like I knew that Rakia would have to say the stupid thing because she was drunk, and also that's what Rakia's like. Like Rakia would say, "Could you please maybe not kill the leader of this competition and competition until after I win, because I would very much like to win," which I know was a stupid idea, but I knew Rakia was going to do it anyway, and it was going to cause fireworks. And I was prepared to throw down, but there was like part of me was like, well, if I can get out of this without being killed, that would be very nice, because I kind of knew what his powers like. I know what like Eden, is like, and the angels are like. It's not cool.
But
not good.
Rakia does not.
Yeah. Rakia does not, though. So that one was a bit more better, I guess.
I think that's a bit of Alex leaking out, really. It's just like Tuscus.
Yeah.
But
although I want everyone to have... Yeah, to be fair.
To be fair, we were in the middle of a dinner party.
This is the only argument that I would take. I would take no offense to, because that's fair enough. Like, look, I just want to have my meal, sir. This is a Wendy's.
So as I told you when we have talked about this.
Yes, absolutely, we have
about an hour at a given moment.
Yes,
Joe genuinely seemed confused.
I did
about why we weren't going around killing things.
No, I didn't say killing things. I said, why aren't you going around and at least attempting to fight things, especially when the moment calls for it.
So far, none of the moments have called for it.
Yeah, it's always been better, really.
Spider. I mean, to be fair, I
well, actually, yeah, that was a cool moment for Adriana, though, and I didn't want to take that away from Adriana. Although, like, I did think combat was going to happen at that point when Rakia was just leaning over saying, "Hey, stop being rude," But
I did, but it turned into the situation of, look, pistols aren't for threats, they're for action, because everyone was like, "Oh, you want to go, do you? I'm asking this as a question, not as a specific threat, but this is a threatening question," and I was like, no one's doing anything.
To be honest, I thought I was going to throw down because you said Adriana was there, and I thought he was going to attack her. And I thought you were going to see Red Rage, Adrian.
Just Kill Bill sirens in the background.
His nose would be on the other side of his cerebellum.
But that's what
you just see, like,
saying,
you see, like 20 meters away, to see the ship sinking.
But that was what I was said, though. It would be so much more boring if we did just, like, mince him, like, as a team, because then Adriana wouldn't have that amazing cool moment of, like, showing the extent of her powers. And it was like, oh, right.
I'm actually fine with that. I'm actually fine with the way that turned out. There was another thing that I actually was a little miffed with, which was, again, like, the amount of different things that I was like, okay, so we've got this character, we've got that character, we've got the other character, here we go. None of them ended up getting attacked, none of them ended up attacking you with success or anything like that. The only one that I would actually say, the end of a situation that I actually thought was probably the perfect ending, was when I had the Bouncy Kraken Castle and the entertainment director. Both of you were just like, look, you need to stop this. We're not actually here to fight. And somehow both charisma rolls your way out of that entire situation. I was like, you know what? Fair enough, because Fletcher, like, I think it was based on the nuance of the way that I worded it. Because it's like, they said, oh, we're we're putting you down because you're clearly only here to hurt people, and you're clearly only here to like cause havoc and kill, and so therefore we're going to stop you before you do anything worse. And it's like, okay, these guys are either misinformed or someone has told them some kind of misconception about us. And thanks to the way that I worded that, or even I guess thanks to more your insight as players, you were able to start realizing, okay, something is wrong with their perception of us. Regardless of whether or not it's just they just don't understand us, or someone has given a false understanding of us, we need to sort this out. And I really quite liked that. That was actually really good.
I mean, that led to one of the best episodes. That really did, because that led to like the real villain, and just like Kleefov is like amazing. This is the thing. Like, I know you're disappointed that we didn't go for these mini bosses, but then we got to like, the main, like the big Kahuna, in a much more interesting way.
I'm not necessarily disappointed, because I was actually quite happy that you guys actually beat them in that way. And to be honest, they weren't mini bosses; they were just enemies. They were just quite strong. They're actually the same level as you two, which is funny because they're like, oh man, these mini bosses are like, yeah, they're just enemies. You guys are just very high level now.
Oh, well, are we the mini bosses? Why is there a bar of health over my head? Oh no!
I think I found out recently that you actually are a mini boss, Rakia. Like,
yeah, it's true. It's true.
Well, having been the one to watch the episode as opposed to being it, he's obviously were holding back quite a bit whenever you were attacking them.
Yes,
he's were like. Let's be honest, if they actually were enemies, you probably could have taken them down in a couple of rounds.
I was pretty darn sure that if Rakia had critted on Extremity Whip, she would have instantly defeated or killed the entertainment director.
Yeah,
however, I was pretty darn sure that neither of them would have been able to instantly defeat the Kraken Castle, but it would have taken some time.
You know what's crazy actually is that at first I was actually trying to deal some serious damage to the Kraken Castle, but because and again it was like organically found out that he took like the other, was it the evolution or the mutation, which is like
malleable
immune to that
physiology,
malleable physiology, and then he just did that, and it's like, oh, my attacks do nothing at all. Huh.
Oh, so it's not that he has a resistance. He's actually immune.
Yeah.
This is a grand inconvenience, because there's nothing I have right now on me that can help me fend off this guy.
me and Fletcher just sort of tag each other out of the ring. It's like, right, I'll take her. And that was a good moment as well, because just vaguely says like, I don't know how much longer I can hold back, which is another.
I love that line. That was a really good line for not only Rakia but to come from you. That was actually really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was nice. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I will say it was also quite nice to have Adrian and Cloak back, because in a situation where it's like, oh no, like the captain is down and like he might be dying, and it's just like, oh yeah, so do this thing that basically makes it look like as if he's dead, and now he's completely revitalized back to life. There we go. And
that was very good.
Actually, to be honest as well, I think me and Alex did talk about this after that session, was that it was probably good that me and Cloak weren't there for Alex and Fletcher and Connor sec. Considering me and Adrian think would be very easily against the Kraken Castle.
You would have a lot of difficulties. The only way that you could damage them is through structure. That's it. Because you have to, your stingers have to stab into, like actually deal damage, pierce into their flesh to deal the poison. So structure was the only way that you would be able to harm them, and I mean you'd actually have to do biostructure. The lance also wouldn't work either.
Yeah, it's physical damage. Still.
I mean, it's physical damage. I mean, it would do poison, yes, but like that is really tiny amounts of poison. In comparison, like the best part about poison from Deleterium is on top of physical rather than just because all it would have been is that your damage, so whatever you're rolling plus whatever the lance does from physical, all of that would have been neutralized. That would have just gone, and it would have just only been like the D6 or whatever it is, a D10 or whatever of poison. That would have been nothing. However, your structure would have done some really good stuff if you had been able to land it multiple times, which, to be fair, you have connectivity, I think is it called, or conductivity.
Connectivity.
Which pretty much means that you don't even have to move to biostructure him, which is actually really good. I was actually going to say having Bill back was actually nice, but having Bill not in that session actually really helped, because having Cloak, a guy who can nullify people, a guy who is immune to the situation of, oh no, what happens if his powers are too good for you guys? Because he just goes, yeah, I touched him and now those aren't an issue. But on top of that, if his powers aren't working, which they always are, but if they weren't working, he's a willpower user, which means that he can directly damage a person regardless of their powers, so long as he can either physically touch them or pass his limb, ligament, or even, weapon that is imbued with willpower through what is or should be their body. And therefore, he can affect intangibility users, mimics, and even rubber physiology users. So, because of that, he doesn't need nullification to mess that guy up. And I was just like, I'm really glad that they weren't there in that situation, because then at least it could actually seem like an actual struggle, rather than Adrian and Cloak just walking in and just tag teaming the heck out of these two and just completely wrecking them, because they can't do barely anything against them. It's like, oh no, some sonic damage, let me just heal your ears for you. Oh no, rubber physiology, Hadouken, like, it just, nothing they could really do would actually be like a permanent issue for those two.
You know what? Why else I really like that they weren't there, but it's like why it was good that it was like a Fletcher and Rakia episode. I mean, this is kind of meta, because we know that something that you as Adriana planted, which me and Conrad actually did discuss, like, afterwards, because I thought that it was so funny and obvious, at the same time. It's because, like, Rakia and Fletcher have spent, quite some time together post cancellation of the tournament, and have become great friends and great students and stuff. And there's a possibility with Adriana that they are a little bit too close for just friends. That they may actually possibly have romance in the air. And I find it, and again, I had to ask, Connor for this, because I was like, it would be very appropriate if that happens. And I find it so funny, the idea that they are like, they are kind of like, perfect for each other, but they're too, because of who they are, they're just too dumb to even realize it. So they're just gonna, like, have this sort of like, will they realize that they could be lovers thing about them? And it's like, you get to see more of their dynamic together, as a team, away from the rest of the group. And I kind of like that. I'm liking the possibilities of this, of like showing their very odd, very wholesome relationship.
I'd say that would be quite interesting to see as it grows and develops. There's three characters that have always interested me the most out of the team, which is probably Adrian, Cloak, and then Fletcher. Only because we don't know anything about Fletcher or Cloak, and the reason that I'm the most interested about Adrian is because Adrian and Adriana have this whole thing of like, they are the last of their kind. And there is not really much else that they can do about the past, but now need to keep moving. Adrian has been recognised as someone who is worthy of fighting later by someone who is pretty much almost at champion level already. And yet they also still have a person that they're basically the greatest vendetta as well. On top of this, they also have a vendetta towards the Behemoth champion. So they're racking up people in almost like a hit list, and I love it, because it's this thing of like, even if Adrian's not like ticking them off on some kind of list, it's still that thing of like, okay, Adrian is going to now like take down this character. Adrian is now going to go after this character. This character has now come for Adrian, and Adrian is like, fine, let's do this. And it's just that whole thing of like, no matter how hard they try, none of them have that kind of like struggle. And the only reason is because the way that you've built your character, Sam. Because like, the whole thing of you wanting to be the honourable person, you wanting to protect the honour of your friends, your family, even yourself, and also fight people for the sake of enjoying a good, decent fight, suddenly turns your character into a multi-dimensional character, because not only do they have family they need to protect, people they need to protect, a brand they need to protect, they also have their pride as a warrior.
Standards.
They have standards, and they have. No, go
on. I just want to tell the people that there are things I've wanted to do with Adrian. As I've told you, like loads of things I could have done because of the personality I've gave Adrian. Can't actually do them because they'd be going against the personality of the character I've made. Doing ranged abilities like connectivity as an attack. I'm never going to use that as an attack. I might do it to strip someone of like a ranged weapon, like a sniper rifle, or like the throwing cards. Never actually going to do that as an attack.
Actually, kind of. This is the thing, because
I have to be honest.
That's kind of big.
I feel like Sam is.
Sam.
Well, I'll tell you what. Sam is the least metagamey character that we actually have in the team.
I've wanted to, but I can't because it just wouldn't work.
It just wouldn't work with your character that she suddenly
go
just
against
goes.
Character.
Anyway, so here I pull out me gun. Because as you said, like you've stated that Adrian has stated, and I quote, "Guns or ranged weapons are for cowards."
For cards.
Yeah, and I quite like that because if you think about everything, like Adrian, although Adrian has flight, it is more for mobility than it is to stay back from an opponent. Because if you think about it, everything Adrian can do is all based on touching something, hitting something, punching something, grabbing something, deconstructing and reconstructing something. All of that requires Adrian to be physically in contact with whatever or whoever that they are currently affecting. Therefore, meaning that flight is only for maneuverability when they are trying to get away from something, or to help them in situations for fighting. But ultimately, they're still going to be going closer enough to their opponent where their opponent can also hit them. Which is why Adrian has like this thicker carapace from the night mode and from the paladin mode, because it's that thing of like always stay defensive, always be ready, never be cowardly.
To quote the great Rocky Balboa, it's not about how hard you hit; it's about how hard you can get hit.
Damn it!
And keep moving forward.
For those of you who don't know, Sam has been constantly making connections between his character Adrian B. Crawford with Rocky Balboa from the films. Rocky.
And Rakia and Apollo Creed.
He's made memes and posters. It's actually rather adorable.
It is.
Yeah. I tell you something, like to get away from Rocky for a minute. We'll never be getting away from Rocky, but to get away from that for a moment, speaking of meta stuff, just to talk about like Bill's character for a moment, Cloak. It's like there are so many times, like he did say, like, oh, no one's asked me anything, nobody presses me on certain things, and I'm like, I really, really, really want to, but I can't because Rakia just unquestionably trusts him. And I made this conscious decision, like after the whole badge thing of like gaining Rakia's trust by giving Rakia a badge when she has none, seemingly out of the goodness of his heart and stuff. And Rakia just decides right then, it's like, you are going to be one of my best friends. and partly because it's funny because Cloak is very stoic and pretty much almost the opposite personality to Rakia, and to Rakia just like I think even from the beginning, Rakia tried really hard to make friends with Cloak and was like in the wrong way. Like Rakia tries to hold Cloak's hand to like put him into the portal, and Cloak immediately just like recoils and is about to like do a thing that I think is like not would not be cool for Rakia, but it just sort of like that's their kind of relationship. And I think that I would love to press him on stuff, but like the meta version was I know, oh, he's doing something. I don't trust him, but Rakia does trust him. Like Rakia is incredibly naive, and I don't trust him for what he did. Of that moment, that kind of nice moment where he rolled for something when touching Rakia, and it's sort of like a OU sort of thing, and feeling good. And he did something. He did something, and I want to know what it was, but I can't know because that's yeah. So it's just driving me insane. Okay, like just let him know that I absolutely do want to know, but it's in my character not to say anything because
I think
why would
I think we
Yeah.
have to talk about one meta. This is funny because now you just reminded me of this. I think we do have to talk about one meta. Nobody knows Cloak's name. Nobody knows his real name. People call him Eraser because nobody. No, I want to point out just as a reminder for those who have watched the episodes or who don't watch the episodes or who might watch the episodes. Either way, it is now it's coming up to episode 18. We have done 18 separate streams, 17 if not 16 of which 16 of which, if not 15 of which, Bill Cloak has been in. We call him Cloak because on the first day Bill couldn't tell me his character's name, because he forgot to make one on the day. So he couldn't name his character, but then he informed me halfway through the stream that he has a name for his character, but he'll tell me at the end of the stream. I said, okay. He never did. And no one ever asked his name. After no one asked his name, the entire meme began that nobody has ever asked his name. So, we called him Cloak for the sake of knowing who I'm talking about. However, nobody in universe, he just shows up, they do stuff, he works alongside them for in-game a day, like 24 whole hours. He even saves the lives of two of his friends who died and got zombified. They then beat a man who can copy powers, who basically copied the green flame from the killer of Adrian's family, which was a big mistake. They all saw him use his power of nullification on this copier, to which Adrian was then allowed to beat the living daylights out of this man. After they defeated this boss, they then just called him Eraser because that he could erase powers. It was not, and I'm not even kidding, it was not until episode, I think you could go back to it, but I'm pretty sure I think it's either episode 12 or 13, that Adrian's sister, asks Bill's character what his name is, to of which someone is about to say his name is Eraser. He then stops everyone and then says to Adriana, "You can call me Cloak if you'd like."
That's the thing, even when directly asked, he doesn't say.
Oh no, but the reason
this won't give us the information.
No. But the reason why this is fantastic, and I actually asked Bill about this, like you got asked your original real name, or at least you got asked a name. Why did you say Cloak? And he went, because at that point nobody else in the party had ever asked me, so it just seemed like the perfect time to use my meta name. as the name that I used finally, because then whenever you say cloak or eraser, you're technically correct in and outside of universe. And I was like, okay. He also named himself Talos as a reference to his previous character. He said, well, it's because that it's a pretty terrifying name, and it invokes fear. There's a level of mystery behind it, but it also invokes fear. And I was like, okay, fair enough. I mean, to be fair, that's the equivalent of, let's say, for instance, like someone naming themselves, I don't know,
Hitler.
I don't know why, but that was also where my mind went. I was thinking, like, that's also like someone just being a part of, like, a gladiator arena. What is your name, sir?
Hitler.
Hello, sir.
Hitler.
It's Adolf Hitler. But yeah. So, either way, but yeah, it's just, that is one of the funniest meta things to me, that, like, that Cloak is, and has always been technically nameless. There's only one character that we have met so far that knows his real name, and that is Daius Miyamoto.
I didn't roll a high enough thing, so I couldn't know.
You didn't, so you didn't know.
I'm happy that I did. I was going to try it.
Also,
but,
I've spoken to Bill about this. No, also due to the situation, when Cloak got brought his food, he waited for everyone to look away during the Simicael situation. He then pulled down his mask, ate his food very quickly, put his mask back on, so no one actually saw his real face.
Yeah. Amazing.
Because he actually said to me, like, by the way, I never said whether or not when I was going to eat. So, like, if I can I do this? I was like, yeah, sure. And Kane, Bill and I were just laughing about it, because it's like, oh yeah, like, never actually said it. The funny thing...
It's so shady. It's so shady, but because, like, Rakia is like, I'm going to respect his privacy. It obviously means a lot to him. And it's like, I'm like, Rakia, don't be so dumb. Just ask. But no, I can't. That's in your character. God damn it.
But I think that is, without a doubt, the most meta thing, that nobody truly knows his name. It is, at this point, it could very well end up as more mysterious than the Doctor's name from Doctor Who. Like, nobody truly knows his real name, and even the people who truly know his name don't actually really know his name.
Oh my god. I do like it. I would like more Cloak moments, Cloak Rakia modes. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I mean, every time I talk about Rakia, I'm just sort of like, show and tell. It's like, what would make this scene great? Rakia. I don't want to be like that, but I know that I am like that. But it is sort of like, yeah, I would like more, character moments like the ones that like Cloak has had.
I reckon we'll get them. I mean, we've got to deal with the bombshell of, oh no, Tendra Grum is here.
Yeah, and that's going to be awkward.
To be fair to Alex as well, I think that's all of us with our characters. We all think, yeah, if we only had more character moments, or if only our character was in this, it'd be better.
Alex, I think I've already told you this before. I don't know if you remember what I always say about your whole cast.
Yeah. Go on and tell me.
I always say this. I think I am your character's biggest fans, but also your greatest enemies.
Yeah, you do.
Like,
absolutely.
I love your character so much, and I want you to experience the highs and the lows with them. Because when they finally come to the point of which that they're in a boss fight and you don't know whether or not they're about to live or die, there is that instant moment where you just think, is this the end? And actually feel it. Like, is this it? And when it isn't,
I still have PTSD. I still have PTSD from when you did that the other time.
I have only gruesomely killed at least one of your characters each. The rest are really more down to yourselves. Like,
who did you kill off me? All of my characters have died by my own stupid hands, I think.
Oh wait, no, there was that time in with Bill. Well, not you personally. It was actually Bill killed us.
I was going to say, Now, because I was actually about to say, and actually, now that you put it that way, Sam, yes, you have been your own sword of Damocles that has struck you atwixt. Like, you have always killed your characters off by their own hands. So Yeah, I think the only two that I can't give credit for is Makaria and Xanadu, who both died by their own hands, but also didn't, because actually the DMs and the dice rolled killed you.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Either way, that has been this episode of Tabletop Discussion. If you thought that there was anything that we missed about when we were talking about the metas in the Crucible of Avarice campaign, or any of the other campaigns that we've done, please let us know in the comments below. If you also liked any of the stuff that we did during the Crucible of Avarice, check it out this Sunday as we go through the lovely situation of finding out why exactly Tendra Grum is inside of Felix Fatigue's bedroom. Thank you very much for listening, and have a wonderful night.
Bye!
See you in the future!
Ciao, ciao, for now.